I'll call the September 22nd, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council to order. May we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that Councilmember Duffield has an excused absence.
Okay, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Sellis. There's no closed session report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Muldoon, followed by the invocation by Pastor John Thomas of Mariners Church. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gracious God, we approach you with gratitude and thanksgiving for the many blessings that you have afforded us, citizens of the city. We are grateful for the things that we have in place in front of us, and we pray for protection for those that serve our city, for those who educate our children, for those who protect us, for those who lift up the marginalized and the poor. And we pray that you would guide conversations, discussions tonight. Pray a special blessing on our mayor and the entire city council team, and pray for you to give us wisdom tonight. In your name, amen.
Thank you. For those of you that are here this evening for Woody's Wharf, the use permit, which is item number 14 on the agenda, it's the council's intent to continue that till October the 13th when we have a full city council present. So Woody's Wharf, item number 14 is going to be continued to October the 13th. Madam Clerk.
Notice to the public. The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium. The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for City Council announcements on non-discussion items.
Councilmember Piotr. Councilmember Petros.
Two very quick ones, Mayor. I want to thank you for allowing me to represent you and the City Council on Sunday. I was honored and pleased to be the representative of this council to the peer-to-peer celebration. The group gathered about 700 of our local children to hold hands, creating a wave of compassion between the Newport Pier and the Balboa Pier. The overall goal was to have enough hand-holding to stretch that distance. And while they missed it by that much, it was still quite an evidence of just what the young people can teach us about compassion and love for one another. I was moved. It was tremendous, the representation of this city. The fire department, the police department was represented. And I would like to shout out to BJ's Pizza, as they provided all of the fixings for a great pancake breakfast held out there at the A Street Park. So a wonderful event, and something I think we can all learn from our young people and what they're doing in this community. And then another reminder, October 2nd in Cliff Drive Park, we are going to be hosting movie night, Movies in the Park, the Disney feature Frankenweenie, and in kind of a tribute to the Halloween season will be shown. Most importantly, this is an opportunity for friends and families in the Heights area and really throughout all of West Newport, heck, throughout all of the city, to come join us for a night together. Let's get together. We'll see a movie. The Dogzilla catering truck will be there. We'll have games. There'll be popcorn. So please join us the night of October 2nd in Cliff Drive Park for a movie in the park. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Somehow I missed Frankenweenie when it first came out. So
well, you'll have to join us.
Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. Councilmember Muldoon. Councilmember Curry.
Just briefly, there's been quite a bit going on in the community. I was privileged to join the mayor and the mayor pro tem at our fire promotion ceremony this week, and also with many of our colleagues at the Fire and Lifeguard Appreciation Dinner, which was a tremendous event. I was privileged to represent the city at the Coastkeeper Dinner. That's an organization that we work with closely in the city to clean up our beaches and protect our water. The Green Expo on the Civics Green this weekend was a tremendous success. I want to thank all of the organizers for that. The Civic Center Art Expo kickoff, I know the mayor will want to talk about that, was tremendously well attended and just some great opportunities to see great art. And then this Saturday, the Vanguard Global Center for Women and Justice held their annual luncheon in Newport Beach. This is an organization through Vanguard University focused on stopping human trafficking, not only internationally, but also here in Orange County, much more so than we're really aware, and they're doing a great job. So a busy week in Newport Beach and some great events. Thank you.
Thank you. On September the 10th, I had the honor and pleasure to participate in International Literacy Day in our city library. And there's the Newport Mesa Pro-Literacy Project that it's a effort of many volunteers and tutors to teach literary and writing skills to people in our community that may be immigrants or other circumstances that they're not completely literate. And it truly is an inspirational program that we have in our city. And I passed out to my fellow council members this little booklet that was passed out. It's called In Our Own Words. And I really encourage you to go through there and read some of these essays that are written by these folks that could not read or write or had very limited skills before they entered into our program. And there's really some quite heartwarming, moving, and compelling stories in here. So, and I think if anyone wants to pick one up, you can get one over in our library or at the Pro-Literacy Project. But it really makes me proud to be part of a city that puts on a program like this. And if you read these stories, you'll be very, very happy you were born and educated in this country. On September the 12th, as Councilmember Curry said, we did the dedication of the second phase of our sculpture garden. We now have 20 sculptures in the Civic Center Park, and we'll be rotating 10 in and 10 out every year. You may like all of them, you may like some of them, you may like none of them, but I encourage you to get out and take a look at them. They're interesting and thought-provoking, and if you don't like what you see out there, and next year there'll be 10 new ones, and you'll have the opportunity with our Arts Commission to get your suggestions in on the submissions that come in and participate in the selection process. And it really is a spectacular exhibition, and it's the final phase of the completion of our Civic Center project. So it was, in my opinion, a very monumental day when we did that dedication. On the 16th of September, with Councilmember Curry and former Senator Marion Bergeson, I helped christen the Explore Ocean boat. It's an educational boat for youth in not only our community but all of Southern California to learn about the ocean. It's a floating educational platform, and they're off to a good start. They've got a good program that's ground-based right now, so now they'll have a floating program out there. And another accomplishment of Explore Ocean, and just another new and interesting thing to be doing for the youth in our community in Newport Beach. And lastly, I get a lot of inquiries from folks on what the city's doing on El Nino preparations. We will be having a presentation by our staff at our study session on October the 13th. But in the meantime, you can go on the city's website. There's a web page that tells about what the city is doing to prepare for El Nino. And Mr. Kift, the link has an awfully complicated name. If folks just type in El Nino preparation, will that get them there?
That will in the search engine, yes.
Yeah, so just type in when you get to the city's web page, El Nino preparation. It'll take you right to the page if you want to see that. Madam Clerk. Oh, I'm sorry. We have this new section of our agenda, matters which the councils want to place on a future agenda, item number 13. Is there a motion to move on the issues surrounding off-leash dogs at the mouth of the Santa Ana River? Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any public comment on this? Okay, seeing none, please vote when the screen comes up.
The motion carries unanimously, 6-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Public comments on consent calendar. This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 13. Public comments are invited on consent calendar. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each of the items for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Okay, do we have any public comments on the consent calendar? Please come forward. Okay, seeing none, bring it back to council. Councilmember Muldoon, do you have anything to pull?
No, but a lodge an abstention from item number 4 for financial purposes.
Okay, Councilman Curry.
No items to pull. I will lodge a abstention on item 4 as well for stockholder conflict.
Okay, Councilmember Piotr. Councilmember Petros.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Dixon.
None.
And I have none. I'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I move the balance of the consent calendar, items 1 through 13, with the exception of item number 4, an abstention by Councilmember Muldoon, and also item number 4, abstention by Councilmember Curry.
Okay, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for item 3, ordinance number 2015-28, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, extending section 12.32.022 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code, prohibiting commercial vehicles over 8,000 pounds on Ridge Park Road between Newport Coast Drive and Vista Ridge Road. And I also want to note that this will pass the second reading on October 13th, 2015. The motion carries unanimously, 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Public comments on non-agenda items. Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Okay, public comments on non-agenda items. Please come forward and state your name, please.
Hello again. I'm Wayne Harrison from Fountain Valley. My comments this evening, just as before, are for the purpose of making the case that the council owes Councilman Piotr a unanimous apology, a public apology. You owe him an apology recanting your move to disassociate from his objection to the Supreme Court decision. If the council demonstrated its jurisdiction in its attempt to censure Scott and refer him for prosecution, surely it has jurisdiction to recant and apologize. The argument I made last time is irrefutable. The danger caused by government agencies like this one taking on itself the endorsement and enforcement of that which has been demonstrated to be a physical and moral hazard to the innocent can't be overstated. You know why my argument is irrefutable? Because it's based on nature's law. Oh, sure, I could quote scripture and verse from the Bible, but that's not necessary. The law of nature and of nature's God is written on the heart of every man. You don't need to grow up going to church to want to keep your children from thinking sodomy is normal. I have a perfect illustration of the universal consciousness of that natural law from the Emmys Awards, from all places. The MC said, "It's so ironic that Kim Davis came out of jail to Eye of the Tiger when you consider how many dudes have boned each other to that song." That joke would not be the least bit funny if it wasn't based on a truth. The law of nature and of nature's God exhibit itself in the blanched faces of everyone in the audience. Every attendee was being faced with the same truth that I subjected you all to with the sodomy recruitment poster.
Sir, could you stick to the issue with the council's action and Councilman Piotr, please?
Now that are you now getting a sense of the problem? The city seal now has been associated directly with dudes boning dudes. Something I think it's fair to say is not in the city's best interest. I'm not asking you to overturn the equivalent of Dred Scott in this council chamber. I'm asking you to be like Scott and not be cowed by it. You're better than that.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Deborah Allen. I live at 1021 White Sales Way, basically across the street. And I'm here to ask your help in the coyote problem. We live in Corona Del Mar, not very far from Jasmine Creek and not very far from the various gullies in the city. And we have a very, very serious problem. Other cities have taken a more proactive role, I think, than our city has. And I'm asking that you direct the city staff to look into what other cities have done and take a more proactive role. We have, in our neighborhood, I'm president of my association, I can tell you several cases in my association where coyotes have gone over walls 6 and 8 feet tall to attack and kill small animals in yards that are completely fenced. It's not, it's not a problem of, it's a very serious problem to those of us who have pets. The city of Irvine has apparently, according to the Daily Pilot, a paintball approach. I don't know if that's a good idea. They don't have citizens do it. It's done by the police. But anyway, I would appreciate it if you would do something to establish a little more proactive policy. And Speak Up Newport is going to have a forum on this issue, coyotes, on November the 4th, which is a Wednesday. It's going to be across the hall in the community room at 5:30. And hopefully by then, maybe we can have we're going to have speakers from the city. Someone can announce that some more is being done. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I'm Marianne Soden from the Harborview Hills community. I, too, am here to speak on the coyote issue. I did have a pet in my yard attacked on August 4th. I did find my dog alive and she survived, but in the 50-plus years my family has lived in Corona Del Mar, we've never had a predator come over 6-foot fences into the yard to lay in wait. And so I do think that the nature of the coyotes is evolving, and it's a more dangerous predator than before. I've installed a kennel that's completely secured in my yard to do what I can to make my yard more safe, but I know that even walking in the streets, people are having their animals attacked on leash, and the problem is bigger than I can manage in my own yard. So I would ask you to look at what some other cities are doing and see if there's an opportunity for Newport Beach to expand the service or the eradication efforts you might take to help us manage this coyote population. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Kay Walker. I live in Newport Coast, and we also have a very serious problem with our coyotes. We back up to the reservoir, and one of our neighbors' dog was actually attacked through the fence. And when we go for walks in the open area back there, we've seen several coyotes, and actually in the mornings when we're out walking. So I'm also part of Speak Up Newport. We're going to be doing the program on November 4th, and we would very much like to have some suggestions on how citizens can help safeguard our pets from the danger of the coyotes, as well as safeguard ourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Phil Milner. I live at 901 Almond Place in East Bluff. I'm chair of Newport Citizens for Responsible Growth. Our group represents several resident homeowner associations around Corona Del Mar High School. Our charter is to mitigate the undesirable consequences of the athletic field modifications, including noise, lighting, parking, traffic, safety, trash, and other issues. These issues all affect the quality of life and our ability to have peaceful enjoyment of our homes. We have developed a good working relationship with several school board members and staff over the past year. We have made them all aware of our concerns and several are sympathetic. For example, Paul Reed included language in the scope of work given to the proposed design architects to mitigate the effects of the project on our neighborhoods. On the other hand, a school board member was recently quoted in a local paper telling the CDM PTA, quote, eventually they'll want some type of curfew for lights and usage, but we'll work through that, unquote. That sounds a little bit like an us versus them situation. We found that other school districts in California have embraced the surrounding communities as a partner and stakeholder with their local school districts. The effort to meet the needs of both the schools and the neighbors has generated what San Jose's Leland High School calls a, quote, contract with the community, unquote. Contracts typically define issues including sound limits, lighting, illumination, shielding, hours for use, how often the facility can be used per year, limits on outside use, traffic control, security, parking plans, etc. Named school district positions are made responsible for making sure the agreement is enforced, and consequences for misuse of the facility are defined if the contract is violated. To make this work, stakeholders must be identified. So far, our work has been with the school board and staff. We need to include CDM administration as well as the CDM athletic department, students, parents, PTA boosters, and the city. Martha Fleur, president of the Newport Mesa Unified School Board, has requested that we engage the Newport Beach City Council in this effort. She would like a member of the council to participate in a study session that with identified stakeholders to help facilitate putting the usage agreement together. In the end, we would like to see the city's use of the CDM facilities, including the Aquatic Center, also defined in the usage agreement. We understand the CEQA process. We do not believe that the 30 to 60-day period for public comment on a draft EIR provides the necessary time to put together the type of agreement we believe we can create. Our group would have no choice but to litigate to stop the project if we are required to wait for the final EIR. The Newport Citizens for Responsible Growth wants to go a better way. We would be happy to have a complete agreement before the draft EIR is issued. We believe that a contract with the community will help the project move forward without additional delays, save the Newport Mesa School District money, provide the facility the school needs, and protect the quality of life of our neighbors. This can be a win-win for everybody. We look forward to your participation in the project.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Mr. Mayor, real quickly.
Yes, Mr. Milner.
Mr. Milner. Mr. Milner, I'll be joining at the study session. If you want, we can talk after, or we can get in touch. Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Christine Daly. I live at 9 Jupiter Hills Drive in Newport Beach, which is in the neighborhood called One Ford Road. I moved there because of the close proximity to the schools. And I think I'm living about a mile, maybe a half a mile from CDM High School. And my children, we've chosen the Our Lady Queen of Angels for our school. And I was delighted because it was so close. However, what I find is that it takes me sometimes 40 minutes or longer just to travel from my home to my school to get my two children who are 10 and 13 to school. I wouldn't want them to walk because of their young age. Crossing Jamboree would be very treacherous. So we drive. And some days we go out the Ford exit. Sometimes we go out the other way. Sometimes we go around the back bay. Sometimes we go past the grocery store. Every time we go, it takes us 40 minutes to drive about a half mile. So what's a mother supposed to do? We have children who are stressed, getting to school, their hearts are beating, I need to get to my locker, and we've left 40 minutes before school, and we live a half an hour away. And in a city such as ours, one that I take such great pride in living in, we have such fabulous programs. We have a fabulous city hall, we have a fabulous art park, we have fabulous junior guards program, the best officers, the best of everything. But we have the worst in traffic just to get our kids to school. We have had children nearly die in car accidents that are high schoolers leaving our neighborhood to get to school. And they're taking these circuitous routes to avoid the traffic. and it's been really treacherous for some. So what I'm here to ask for is if we could please have Tony Brine work on a traffic study with regard to this school and with regard to this community, because we have so many people, everybody on this side of the bay that goes to the public school with children ages 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade go to that school. We have K through 8 at the Catholic school. For 50 years, the Catholic school has existed, and we also have had CDM. And we've had this problem for traffic. And I feel as though with our great city and with our great officers, we could get perhaps some traffic officers out there dispatched to help control the traffic, move the traffic forward, not simply ticket, but to control traffic, to direct people to come, to stop, to turn, and just facilitate all these people who converge in this area. I don't know if that's the solution. I've talked with Tony over email. I've suggested perhaps some footbridges would help motivate other teens to walk. I'd gladly walk my children if there was a footbridge, but I'm not going to cross that road the way it is, not with people driving 50 to 70 miles an hour. It's a serious concern for our community, and I ask you to please look into this, study this, drive it yourself, experience it firsthand. It's a 1-hour time frame in the morning that is really treacherous. It's dangerous, it's scary, it creates a lot of stress in a lot of type A people personality, and it really is a burden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Lori Preege, and I also live in Winford Road. My children go to CDM. I have 3. And I also want to echo Christine's sentiments. Like her, I go the back way. I never go out the front gate. I always go the long way around to get my kids to school. And like her children, my children are also stressed out trying to get there. It is the 1 hour in the morning before school, and it's about an hour after school. And it's really quite dangerous. If you were to go there, you would see how the parents cross one lane of traffic into the other opposite lane of traffic to get around cars that are parked waiting to pick up their children in the parking lot. So I invite you guys to come out one morning and then again in the afternoon and live through what the parents are going through. Also, I'd be curious to see the accident history around the school, because there are quite a lot of accidents on East Bluff Drive at Mar Vista. And I also would like to request that the city do some sort of a traffic survey. And I think that a lot of parents would really appreciate to see the effort put out by the city in regards to the traffic. It's quite the bottleneck. There's only 2 ways out, and everybody's going in. So appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Mayor Solich.
Councilmember Petros.
Just a quick observation. Ladies, thank you so much for coming out and bringing this forward. I have been practicing transportation planning and traffic engineering for about 30 years. For the last 8 to 10 of them, I've been invited to participate in, I want to say, 4 or 5 studies at Corona Del Mar High School. I wrote the traffic management plan for Our Lady Queen of Angels School. I am very, very familiar with that. All to say, your concerns are real. They occur every year. They have occurred every year for the 10 years that I have been involved and for the decades before me. As it stands right now, the city already manipulates the signal timing at that intersection to favor inbound moves in the morning. They do it at both ends so that there is better ingress and egress. At least at the outset of the year, if not at other points throughout the year, there is police presence to facilitate those movements. I am not going to suggest to you, though, that that's enough. But that is what is available to us as a city. We have looked at this time and time again. What I really think should occur is an honest, sober discussion with our colleagues at the school district about restricting student parking, and thereby maybe encourage folks to walk, to bike, maybe institute busing again. I know that's a 4-letter word to a teenager, but that is something that needs to be thought of if we want to remedy that traffic problem. But what I'd like for you to leave here knowing is this is not something that the city has turned a blind eye to. It's not something we don't already know about. We've been following it for like I say, decades. I am interested to see if there aren't stones we haven't uncovered, but we should really just acknowledge the fact that it may be outside of our jurisdiction, but we can continue to talk with the district about what maybe they can do.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Jim Daly. Christine's my better half. I live at 9 Jupiter Hills. And following up on that, so in addition to my life as a lawyer, I'm a first responder, a volunteer since 9/11 with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I've had just a wonderful experience donating my time for the community. And about your comments and truly about this issue right outside my neighborhood, it's so dangerous. I mean, I, as an adult, as somebody who's really, I think, generally got it together at a corner, just would not want to cross with a bicycle, with anything across Ford Road to across Jamboree. And it is, there are so many deaths we've occurred in our city on bicycles. It's not good to go with what we've done before. And it may take us to spend the money to actually make a fix. And whether that is some kind of a footbridge like other communities have, I just think that it's time to actually make some advancements, some changes, some good things to make it safer, to make it easier. All these kids could go to that school if they had a safe way to get there on bicycles, and even beyond that. How about going to the beach, being able to get to the beach a lot easier? Just even from our neighborhood all the way to the beach. It's just too dangerous. And, we have essentially the Audubon going on, if I said that versus the Audubon Society, I don't know. But it's just too fast on the road. I don't say we should decrease the speed. It's great to get from one place to another. But as far as helping people get across the street, and on the other side, Bison to MacArthur, there are two major areas that could be improved with that type of a capital expenditure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Hi, Annie Lint, Newport Citizens for Responsible Growth. And this, as Phil was talking earlier, I live across the street from the high school, and I've lived there happily for 30 years. And I became very close friends with Dave Kift when we worked on getting the crossing guard situation fixed when they changed the parking and the traffic, and I really appreciated that. I will give you a lot of credit for working hard to change it. It is so much better than it used to be 30 years ago. You've made great strides in the drop-off, in the rerouting traffic, in the staggering the times when it starts, in zero period, in having the grade school start later, and having a crossing guard for both the grade school and for the high school. I personally called the police 2 times when I witnessed children hit in the traffic, in the crosswalk, when there was no crossing guard, and you've taken care of that. But we do need to look into, both my kids walk to school, so I don't have to worry about driving in the traffic, but they both have been tapped by cars in the crosswalk as they tried to cross the street. It's insanely crazy how dangerous it is, and that 2 children were hit, and that's what it took before we really started changing things. We could consider possibly off-site parking with a shuttle. We think about it for buses. Maybe that's a great way to say, you guys can drive your cars. Here's the deal. You can park off-site. We have off-site parking. Here's the shuttle bus. We'll get you over to the school and we'll get you back. It's not ideal, but it's a start because you really have 2 ways to get around the back of the school. That's it. 2 ways in, 2 ways out. And rescue vehicles cannot get in and out during times when the kids are being dropped off in particular and picked up. Rescue vehicles have been stopped and unable to get in and out. So if we could look at it, I would be willing to work with you again, work with their cookies involved again, Dave. I'll be happy to work with you in trying to take this to a new place and consider some more options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Selich, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. You'll perhaps be relieved to know I'm not here to speak about coyotes, sodomy, or high school traffic problems. This is the Newport Indy, which I think is a very good local weekly paper that we have that does an excellent job of covering the affairs of the city government, even has the mayor on this issue from a week before last. But I think a week before last, they did the city a disservice on a day. Apparently, they had no editorial comment to run on their forum page. So they published this map adapted from the city website, which gives a very strong impression that Newport Beach is kind of like the county. The council is kind of like the county board of supervisors, that if you live in this brown area, if you're one of those 11,000 people, Miss Dixon is your person on the council. If you're in this pink area, one of those 12,000 people, Mr. Petros is your person. It shows your pictures down here, who to contact if you live in that area. For those of you who have bought into the myth that is how government works in Newport Beach, I wanted to emphasize to you that these colored areas here are not budget districts, they're not taxation districts, they're not legislative districts, they're not even electoral districts, in the sense that depending on the color of the district you live on or in, you vote on different issues or your vote is counted different. What these are, and all these are, these things we call council districts, are a residency requirement imposed on you by our city charter for the purpose that all of our council people will not come from the same area of the city. The map is really relevant only to those people crazy enough to run for the city council, and what it means if you put your name in the hat, you run against the other people who are in the district with the same color. In other words, you are representatives from a district, you're not representatives for a district. And for those of you who bought into the myth that you are representing a district, if you want it to be that way, if you want to be a representative for a district, you should have the courage to ask the voters to change the city charter so that we vote by districts. Until then, this map, those districts are still just a residency requirement. You are still, each of you, a representative for all of us who, just like the rest of us, happens to live in a particular area. Thank you.
Thank you for that civics lesson. Any other speakers?
Back to schools and traffic. Well, first of all, I reached out to 3 different...
State your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Ann Parker. I reached out to 3 different council people. Thank you very much for immediately returning the calls. I really appreciate that. Well, we have a sober living school opening up at 1111 Bayside Drive. And I think that the council should pull this up and re-examine it. It passed the conditional use permit at the planning commission level, but I really think this warrants a second look. They moved from 485 East 17th Street in Costa Mesa, and if you talk to the people that were other tenants of that building, they had an extremely difficult time with Newport Academy. They were a little out of control, yelling, screaming, swearing, vaping, smoking, the usual scenario that goes along with this. And this particular area on Bayside Drive, there's a beautiful marina there. It's right entering our prime tourist area. I talked to the people at the yacht club. They're not happy about it. I talked to the people at the marina. They're not happy about it. I'm sure you'll be getting emails about it. I would just really appreciate it if you would pull it back up and look at it. They are already operating, which is against their conditional use permit. They're not supposed to be operating yet. And yes, they are operating, and they got caught. They have a kitchen there. They're serving lunch. It hasn't been inspected by the Orange County Health Department. When you're serving 20 people a day lunch, you have to have a certain kind of inspection. I don't know about the fire department, but because they're considered handicapped, I think there's supposed to be a special fire inspection. I just wish you'd please pull it up and re-examine it. Thank you. Oh, and the traffic, the entrance, they drop people in and pull out at the same time in the morning and the afternoon. And if you look at the driveway, speaking of school traffic, you can only really get one car going in and one car going out, and I think it's accidents waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Mr. Mayor, as comment time closes, I did want to talk briefly about the coyote issue, if that's okay. And then you folks can chime in and give direction if you wanted. But Lieutenant Tom Fischbacher and Senior Animal Control Supervisor Valerie Schoenberg are here in the audience. And if you folks wanted to talk with Valerie especially, I would encourage that. And maybe we can get together a community meeting. I know Valerie's been doing that. Just so you know, we have been following what's going on in other cities, the Irvine and the paintball. And actually Laguna trapped and euthanized 3 coyotes. And all of the evidence, not all the evidence, most of the evidence all says that that's not the right practice. The right practice is proper hazing. Paintballing may be part of proper hazing, but as counterintuitive as it is, all the studies show that when you remove a coyote from an area, another one just fills its place. So to me, although it goes against any common sense, the hazing is the best way to do that. And I know Valerie would be very happy to have a public meeting about that with a small group or a big group. So make sure you get her email and we can work on that. If the council wanted to do anything differently after that, that's terrific, but that's kind of where I'd recommend starting.
Well, I think that's a good recommendation. I've seen this happen in other communities, and if you go beyond the hazing, you get the pro and the anti-activist groups start coming into town, weighing in on how the city should be dealing with the issue. So, and
I think Seal Beach did trapping and euthanizing, then reversed the whole thing because it was so upsetting.
It became such a big controversial issue up there. It was terrible.
Yeah. But I really respect, as owner of 2 small pets, it would be heartbreaking to experience that. So let's see what we can do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Okay, oral reports on committee activities. Councilmember Piotr, any reports on committee activities? No. Councilmember Petros?
No, but as we wind down the comments, I did want to acknowledge the attendance of a scout troop here taking up the whole front row. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your attendance, young men. I am very glad you're here, regardless of the comments you've had to listen to.
Yeah, well put. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon? Nope. Councilmember Muldoon? Councilmember Curry?
Just a brief report. The Finance Committee did meet. We're looking at a preparation for the budget going into next year. We're also looking at the increase that we're expecting in pension costs due to changes in the assumptions made at the state level. We made great progress in recent years in addressing our pension liabilities, but the state keeps changing the rules on us and pushing us, along with other California cities, further into the hole. That's an issue that we were working with our employees, but we need help from the legislature to really fix this problem permanently.
Okay, thank you. And I have no reports. So we'll move on to public hearings. Item number 14, Woody's Wharf Use Permit, located at 2318 Newport Boulevard. I'll entertain a motion to continue this to October the 13th when we'll have a full city council present.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Please come forward. If you feel compelled to have to say something tonight. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mayor Selich and members of the council. On the matter, my name is Jim Mosier. On the matter of continuing this item, as I tried to explain in writing, I don't think continuation is the proper item, proper action. I think you should be voting to refer this matter to the Planning Commission. The city of Newport Beach previously got in hot water for assuming that the rules that the city council makes in its ordinances or the public in general don't apply to the city council. Woody's lawyer asked 2 years ago, I guess now it is, where in our zoning code there was a provision allowing council members to appeal a planning commission decision to the city council without filling out the appeal form or paying the fee. And the answer at that time was there was no provision, and therefore the appeal to this council, as I understand it, was invalidated. It's as if it never happened. So you have before you a action that was taken by the Planning Commission on a conditional use permit. Someone now could ask, where is the provision that allows the city council to modify conditional use permits? And again, I think you would find the answer is there is no such provision. On the contrary, or the zoning code, which has been promulgated by previous city councils, makes it very clear to the public, and I cited in writing where those provisions are, that the granting and amending of conditional use permits is a matter for the Planning Commission. If somebody is unhappy with the Planning Commission's decision, they can be appealed to the City Council. I'm not aware that there has been any timely appeal of anything to the City Council. There's a request for amending a conditional use permit. I believe it's a matter that belongs with the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Please vote when the screen comes up.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Piotr.
I was wondering if the city attorney would address Mr. Mosher's comments.
Yeah, well, the city council is the last body that considered the use permit, and so under our code, it would be appropriate for the city council to reconsider it, an amendment to that use permit.
Even though they considered it, according to the judge, inappropriately?
It's my opinion that your consideration of the amendment to the use permit is appropriate. You know, you're always welcome to refer it down to the Planning Commission if you'd rather have them consider the amendment as opposed to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
The motion to continue carries unanimously, 6-0.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the master fee schedule and changes in subsidies.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Steve Montano, the Deputy Finance Director, and tonight we're here to discuss the proposed changes to the master fee schedule as they relate to the police, public works, fire, emergency medical services, and community development departments. Here's an overview of the topics we'll be covering tonight. I'll first explain the purpose of these fees and describe the authority by which we administer and update them. Then we'll briefly summarize the methodology that underlies how these fees for services are calculated. And finally, I'll give you a high-level summary of the proposed fee changes by department. So to give you a bit of background, the master fee schedule is a list of fees that are imposed to recover the cost of services. Now, when I say cost of services, I'm referring to those services that are performed or provided by the city on behalf of private citizens. The starting assumption here is that services benefiting specific individuals, as opposed to the community as a whole, should be paid for by those individuals receiving the benefit. Rather than analyzing the cost of services for all departments at once, we take sort of a phased approach. We align the actual cost of service delivery with the revenues or fees of approximately 3 departments every few years. Fees for the non-study departments in any given year are updated by the Consumer Price Index. So the administration of our master fee schedule on a cost recovery basis is well established in our municipal code, our city's fiscal sustainability plan, and Council Policy F4, that's revenue measures. Generally, fees are set at 100% cost recovery, except for those identified in Code Section 3.36. Modifications to this section is oftentimes necessary to align community benefit and demand or statutory requirements with fees, with our fees in the fee schedule. So for your reference, the proposed changes to this code section can be found in Attachment C of your agenda packet. Now, we've had discussion in previous council meetings about the differences between fees and taxes. So in the interest of clarity, I wanted to briefly distinguish between the two as we talk about the fees. So local government operations are primarily funded from 4 main revenue sources, namely taxes, user fees, fines, and grants. As a charter city, the state gives our city the authority to raise revenues through taxes support general purposes of government. So we think of financing roadways, public safety, infrastructure, things of that sort. The state also gives the city the authority to impose fees on the basis of the criteria you see on the right. So the fees we're presenting today, again, are fees for services provided for the private benefit of citizens who request them. So really briefly, just to give you a snapshot of the methodology, we've contracted with a firm called MGT to use well-established cost accounting methodologies to calculate our municipal fee schedule. on a full cost recovery basis. In a nutshell, here's the summary of the methodology that we use. So we calculate the fully burdened labor and overhead costs of all our operations. We apply this fully burdened labor rate to the time requirements and estimates for the workload given the specific department operation. Then we calculate the cost of providing the entire service considering all those things. And then we, as departments, we cross-check, validate, make sure that it kind of makes sense, not just from an analytical standpoint, but applying the fees, does it make sense? Do they fit? So here's a summary as to the number of fees under consideration and how they're changing in each of the 4 study departments. I'll just note that on this slide, 35% or a total of 101 of the fees are either decreasing or being eliminated. So the previous slide indicated that 26% of the fees under study are not changing at all. But for those that are changing, here's some reasons why. Certain fees are increasing due to the natural increase of service delivery that happens, due to inflation, hourly staffing rates, materials, those sorts of things. Some of the fees are decreasing or being eliminated due to the lower cost of services resulting from gained efficiencies, technological improvements, things of that sort. Other fees are combined with existing fees because oftentimes there is an opportunity to simplify or standardize fees. Staff reviewed the fee schedule and answered questions and incorporated the suggestions of the Finance Committee, the Building and Fire Board of Appeals, and the Building Industry Association of Southern California. So we did take the time to review these with our stakeholders. So let me begin with just providing the overview of the fees on a department by department basis, just beginning with the police department. So I'm not going to go through every fee. The goal of these slides is to just orient you to the specific types of services for which fees are charged in each department. And as we move through each department, we can answer any questions you might have, but I'll just kind of quickly go through these first couple of departments. So again, you see the sort of statistics for the police department. And the police fees, these particular fees, provide requested services such as animal control, voluntary bike licenses, fingerprinting, animal control, alarm monitoring, things of that sort. These particular fees have not been updated since 2010, so the new fees are reflective of any changes, operational changes since that time. Moving on to Public Works. These fees cover the cost to provide engineering and transportation plan check services, encroachment permits, field inspections, pier, marina, mooring permit issuance, water quality construction, things of that sort. Fees, again, have not been updated for this department since 2010, so the changes do incorporate any changes in costs that have occurred since then as well. We have quite a few more changes in the fire department EMS division. These fees are to provide emergency medical service transportation for both advanced and basic life support, and they do include staff time, equipment, and materials. These fees have not been updated since 2008, and the paramedic subscription service fees, longer than that, it's been since 2003 since we've updated those. So just to give you a sort of snapshot of how the ALS and BLS transport fees are changing, this gives you a snapshot of what we are proposing. Just to note that for many years, both the ALS and BLS fees have been based upon the county ground emergency ambulance service rates. So they were not based on our cost of services. We were calculating them off what the county charges. This time, though, we want to align our fees with the actual cost of services, and this is the end result. I'll note that our fees are inclusive of all the materials, sort of like mileage, oxygen, medical supplies. They're all incorporated as one into this fee. We're not separately charging those fees to the customers. Wanted to note a few other changes in EMS. we do recommend the addition of EMS non-transport response fees for patients that do receive a response assessment or in some cases treatment, but no transport to the hospital. Traditionally, the city has not charged for these EMS non-transport fees, but pursuant to our mission to go cost recovery, we are introducing this proposal. And they are in line with fees charged in our neighboring jurisdictions. So we're not out of line. And in fact, this isn't 100% cost recovery, but it is more than what we're currently charging, which is currently zero. But we did want to stay in alignment with our neighboring jurisdictions. We also do recommend that staff, that council authorize the city manager to be given the authority through Municipal Code Section 5.6 to waive all or part of the adopted EMS fees in case of financial hardship or minor medical treatments that really don't warrant the full, cost or the cost that we're proposing here. Finally, we recommend an increase in the paramedic subscription fee from $48 to $60 annually. It's been a long time since we've updated the fees, since 2003. Moving on to Community Development Department fees. These fees cover costs to provide plan reviews, permits and inspections, various development-related services. They have not been updated since 2008. Some noticeable changes here. We are recommending a 50% cost recovery target for the appeals board hearing fee. We hope that this will increase the affordability for applicants who wish to appeal the chief building official or the fire marshal decisions. We also recommend a 50% cost recovery target for fees related to harbor construction. We feel this will align the cost with similar upland permit fees that are assessed. Staff also recommends that the preliminary plan review fee change from 75% of cost recovery to the first 2 hours being free and then going to full cost thereafter. Again, this is sort of a means to be a sort of more customer friendly. We believe that this will allow staff to answer questions by email, telephone, without actually charging customers the fee. If it's a simple question, we can get it out of the way soon. We propose this idea. Per the Building Industry Association's request, we do propose to phase in the increases of selected building and planning fees. The idea here is 50% of the increases effective today, if these fees are approved, and then the remaining portion of the fees would go in effect 100% 1 year from now. Although not among the study departments, just wanted to mention that the Recreation and Senior Service Department is proposing to add facility use fees for the reservation of room space in our new Marina Park facility. As you know, it's scheduled to open soon, December. And these fees are listed on line 460 of the master fee schedule. That's Exhibit 1, Attachment A of your packet if you wanted to see those. This pretty much concludes my presentation. Just wanted to say that if these fees are approved, as currently recommended, staff projects an overall revenue increase, or revenue change of approximately $800,000. And most of these fees will take effect upon adoption, with the exception of planning and development fees. As a matter of course and practice, these usually become effective 60 days after adoption. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no one on the queue, Councilman Piotr, did you want to?
I was going to wait for public input if that was the council's decision.
Okay. I'll open it up for public comments. Anybody from the public want to speak on this? Come forward, please.
Mayor Selich, honorable council members. My name is Steve Lamont, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Building Industry Association of Orange County. By way of background, the Building Industry of Southern California Orange County chapter is a nonprofit trade association representing over 100,000 individuals in the home building industry, as well as over 1,100 member companies here in Orange County. I'm here this evening to make some brief comments on the proposed master fee schedule update as in front of you here tonight, and specifically the staff hourly rate, as well as the overhead indirect cost that you're seeing in the report. First, though, I would like to thank city staff for their proactive approach towards reaching out to their local stakeholders. We do appreciate all the work you have done, and we have to monitor a lot of different cities and jurisdictions here in Orange County, so it makes our job a lot easier when a city staff such as your own here work so hard to let their stakeholders know what's happening. As I'm sure you are aware, housing prices in Orange County are at record highs, and regulatory costs and fees have a large part to do with that. As you look at the fee schedule update, we respectfully ask that you work more towards the most efficient process, as well as a lower overhead direct costs, or indirect costs, excuse me. If the council is inclined to increase the fees here tonight, we do encourage as well as support the staff's proposed phase-in option. And again, we do thank them for allowing this compromise here on the agenda tonight. So thank you for allowing me to give some comments. Thank you.
I just got a couple of questions for you. Are you aware of any cities that don't charge on an hourly basis, that charge a flat fee for certain types of applications, for the planning applications, rather than going on an hourly basis? Or has everyone gone to an hourly fee basis?
No, to my knowledge, there are cities that do a flat fee as well as an hourly fee. So they do pick in, it depends on the city.
In Orange County?
In Orange County, yes.
So what percentage of the county would you say does that of the cities in the county?
I don't know if I can give an exact percentage. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other speakers?
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. The first comment I wanted to make is that procedurally this seems to be another case where the city has things rather screwed up. If you look at the recommendations before you, the first one is a resolution adopting the master fee schedule. The resolution, as Steve Montano just told you, says in it that most of the fees are going to take effect immediately, yet many of the fees are calculated using a cost recovery schedule that you're going to adopt by an ordinance. And the ordinance is just being introduced tonight. It won't be until 2 or 3 weeks from now until it's adopted, and 30 days from now until it's effective. And at least in theory, there should be no certainty that the ordinance is going to be adopted as proposed. It's between first and second reading as for the purpose that it could be modified or changed. So it seems unusual that you're adopting a resolution that assumes a fact that has not happened yet. And I just wanted to point out, at your last meeting, you had something about changing the settlement agreement with respect to airport noise. And I noticed the Board of Supervisors had that matter before them this morning. The county didn't seem to have the same problem. Their issue involved some things that need to be adopted by resolution, by ordinance. They were introducing the ordinance this morning, and at their next meeting, they will be adopting the ordinance, and assuming it's being adopted, they would adopt the resolutions that go with it. I don't understand why we have it backwards here. Second point I want to make is, when this came up in July, we had a bigger spreadsheet that the public could see. Tonight, the public has a microscopic little copy here. So I'm partly going by memory. My memory of the big spreadsheet, if this is announcing to the public, this is what you're adopting for the next year or several years. If the public is expected to look here and see what the fees are, it has many, many columns and many, many fees listed, and it doesn't actually tell you what is the fee being adopted. You have to understand you're probably supposed to look at this column in the center that says fee at the policy, or what is, I can't read it, it's too small. Something rather at policy level or something. And that's the column you're supposed to look at. I don't know how the public is supposed to know that. It's useful that these schedules now have numbers so you can refer to fees. I would suggest it would be useful if the numbers were permanently attached to a fee, so you could relate a fee number 200 and whatever it is in this schedule to what it was in the previous schedule and in future schedules. That would be useful. As to the content of the thing, the Building Association was pointing out the plan check fee. At your last meeting, you approved outsourcing to 2 companies, VCA and JAS. I noticed they charge the city $75 to $95 an hour, yet this new fee schedule is proposing to charge the public for that service $189, going up next year to $228. I'm not quite sure how we get from the $75 it's costing the city to the other, and I have more comments, but I won't have time to say them. So,
thank you. Any other speakers, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Piotr is going to go first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Steve, I'm going through particularly the community development fees. MGT did the survey, but as you explained it, and let me rephrase it so that I'm getting this right. Basically, they looked at the cost to provide the services and figured out what the fee was that we were charging. Did they check other jurisdictions, or was pretty much, hey, this is what it cost us, here's what we need to charge?
But the checking with other jurisdictions wasn't part of their scope of work. We have, subsequent to the conclusion of their study, have done some spot checking on our own, but no, that was not part of their scope of work.
Okay, and like you said, they did it on a macro basis. So if they wanted to say, okay, look at all the building permits, here's what it cost us to actually issue the permits, here's the money we got in, we need to make an adjustment. It didn't look at residential versus commercial versus industrial, remodels versus new construction, correct?
Well, they did take into consideration the sort of the spectrum of activities that our staff undertakes to do a permit or to do a plan check or an inspection. So that's inclusive of every activity that our building and planning staff are doing.
Yeah, so they broke it out based on like inspections, plan checks.
That's
right. The actual issuance of the permit, the administrative side. But they didn't get down into it and track it on a per project or per type of construction or that kind of basis.
Do you know? I don't. I think that no. They did. Yeah, as a whole, yes.
Okay. Some cities do that, and you get charged, and a lot of these cities find that the city ends up subsidizing residential, especially residential remodels, because the time that it takes to do it is still significant, and you're oftentimes dealing with amateurs who are not used to the construction process. But they want to encourage people to remodel and change their homes and improve and to actually get a permit for the work. So the city consciously subsidizes it. And what they found when they grouped it together is that you had some types of construction, mostly commercial, industrial, ended up subsidizing residential, or new construction residential subsidized the remodels. So I would like to see our study before next year break it down on a tight basis, and I would like to see it based on the actual time that it takes us to do it. And I've talked to community development, and I understand that we have software available that does allow us to track that. We just haven't been utilizing it that much. One of the other things that came up in community development is the hourly rates that we charge, as well as plan check and permit. Plan check or permits are determined based on the construction cost. Who determines the construction cost? Do we just take the applicant's word, or do we use numbers from another source?
I suspect, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that based on the building valuation tables? So that's a standard practice across most cities, I would venture to say, using the building valuation tables.
Right, and so you're using some sort of a standardized table.
That's right.
So now those numbers go up every year as the cost of construction has gone up. So therefore, our permit fees go up automatically, whether we adjust fees or not, because we're doing it based on a percentage of the construction value, and the construction values are continually going up. So the question I've got, we're going from a 72% to an 87% of the permit cost to charge for a plan check. So why is it that our plan checks are costing that much more? We're increasing them not just based on the construction cost, but in addition to that, we're charging a higher percentage of that construction cost.
Well, there's a number of, as I mentioned before, we're looking closely at our operations, incorporating the cost of the service delivery for those particular fees relating to the building valuation tables. That's taken into consideration as well for those types of fees.
But my concern here is that the construction costs go up, so our permit fees go up. And rather than still charging the same percentage of those permit fees for plan check, we've actually increased that 14% or whatever. So my question is why are all of a sudden plan checks taking that much more time and money than they have in the previous history of the city? And my concern is that the study sat there and said, here's what it costs, here's what we need to charge, and nobody asked, are we charging too much or are we doing too much? Are we plan checking things beyond what the code requires or things like that? And there's nothing holding our costs in check. We're just doing 100% fee recovery, which is the direction of the council. But no one's looking at, are we efficient in what we're doing?
And maybe I can go ahead and answer that question. My name is Simone Georges. I'm the chief building official for the city. With regards to why the plan check fees have suddenly gone up, we're using a lot more contract staff now. We're augmenting, we have our core staff, but there's been such an influx of development activity that we've needed to reach out to use more contract staff and use more of our consultants. So it's a mixture of staffing that's in-house plus some of our additional contract consultant services. So we put that in the mix of the analysis of that's a true cost to provide services.
So you're telling me that using outside contract staff is much more expensive than using our own employees?
We are using contract staff in addition to our own employees.
I would argue that the contract staff's cheaper than our own employees, especially with the PERS and other pension overhead. So why aren't we reducing fees?
The cost of contract staff actually does fluctuate. And so when there was the Great Recession, contract staff was cheaper. Now there's a development boom. A lot of experienced staff have left as far as contract. Contract prices for contract staff that we've seen in our industry has actually gone up. And contract staff now is expensive.
So it's more to do with supply and demand rather than contract or in-house.
That's correct.
That even if we were to bring them in-house, we'd have to pay a lot because they're being offered a lot of money elsewhere because they're in demand.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as Mr. Mosier brought up, Simone, the outsourced contracts that we do have, the hourly rates are pretty economical, in the $75 to $100 an hour range. I guess it depends on who is actually doing the work on the project.
The outside consultants that do plan review, they take a percentage of the plan check fee we collect. They don't charge hourly. They only charge hourly when there's a special need, where we never collected a plan check fee. There was no valuation based. So majority of even what we charge internally at City Hall is all valuation based from just for building permits and building plan checks.
Doesn't that contradict what you just told me as far as the cost of doing the extra plan check, though? If they're just charging a percentage of what we charge and we haven't raised our rates, we're still doing 72% of the permit cost, then they're getting a percentage of that. Is that percentage that they're getting of our fee going up?
The cost to provide that service is an extra cost that goes in the analysis. It's an extra cost to hire contract staff. It's an extra cost to have an outside consultant to provide that plan review service.
So the consultant charges a percentage of our fee?
That's correct.
75%? What's the...
One of them is 60%, the other one is 65%.
65%. So no matter what we charge, they get 65%.
That's correct.
Are you saying that it costs us more than 35% on our side? And that's why you need to raise it from 72 to 87?
No.
Because their fees aren't going up.
No, that's not the case. It's a combination of we have using more outside consultants. So that's an additional cost to us. Plus, we actually have contract staff in-house that we've brought on board to assist staff at City Hall. And that's an extra cost also.
But we're getting additional fees, and they only get a percentage of what we get, of what we charge, is what you just told me. So here, the bottom line is, I don't understand why we're going from 72 to 87% when the fee is already going up based on the construction valuation.
For this particular study, we've held that valuation steady. We've looked at what's our valuation table. We have not increased that and made those projections as far as from a revenue standpoint, and then looked at what our expenses are, and that's the output.
So you're saying we're not raising the construction costs and we're not using updated tables?
We're holding our valuation tables steady for this study, and they'll get updated next year.
Okay, so they get updated, but for the study purposes, you use last year's schedule.
Yes.
Okay. I guess another question for Simone, but this is also for planning. You know, most consultants charge based on the type of person that's doing the work. A senior person, 1 year person, whatever, and they have a varied rate on schedule. Why don't we do the same? Why do we have a flat hourly rate for everything? I mean, you've got senior inspectors, you've got young inspectors, and yet we still have just one inspector rate. Same thing for plan check.
Trying to understand the question. Mr. Piotr?
Whether you charge $75 an hour or $125 an hour, depending on which guy's working on it.
I think they have a blended rate as opposed to, charging it by each level. So they kind of blend all the rates to do cost recovery, is my understanding of it.
Yeah, that's my problem. I don't really care for the blended rate, because if I get a new guy on there and he spends 40 hours, I get charged the blended rate. And if I had an experienced guy that only took 15, it would be a lot cheaper. I don't mind using the new guy, but I don't want to be penalized for it. Okay. Steve, do you have a breakdown on the amount of fees that are going up based on this? You said $800,000. How much of that is attributable to community development?
I would say about 40% of that total is attributable to community development fees. Yeah, it's about 40%.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what I have for now.
Okay, Councilmember Petros.
I thought I was confused before we started. Thank you. I was pleased to see that the balance of the fees really went up and went down. So that was something. And I also was drawn to the fact that the building fees, actually 67% of them went down. But I have to say, and I echo some of my colleagues' concerns, primarily about the plan check hourly rate. I thought that what I read was that the increase was due primarily to overhead, reflecting the delta between the rise in salaries and benefits, that this was an overhead that actually went up. Then I hear that it is, in fact, could be attributable to the valuation. But then when I look at the table that speaks to the valuation charts, there's no linkage between the building permit activity under lines 149 down to 160 and this hourly rate. My point is that I don't feel, as it relates to that rate in particular, that I have enough information to act. And I would prefer, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to move forward with this, that we pull that one item out of this, carry that over for some more detailed information and review before we set a rate that goes that high on that one particular very important activity that the city does.
Talking about the $274?
The 228.
228.
I feel comfortable knowing with what the policies say about full cost recovery and what I read in the staff report, that the balance of these fees are fair and achieve our objectives. That one in particular, to me, I can't follow the math. Mr. Piotr has raised even more question about that. And so I would suggest that if you want to move this forward, let's deal with the balance of this and hold that one over so that there is a clear explanation of why it's changing. Is it an hourly rate? Is it related to building valuation? How are those two lines differentiated? And then I will feel better about acting on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Curry.
Let me first observe that the Finance Committee did consider this issue carefully, thoughtfully, methodically, and recommended this action to the council tonight. The policy for us to review fees on a periodic basis is one that was made Back, I think, about 2008, 9, or 10, as part of the fiscal sustainability plan. It's been a good policy, one that's helped and enabled us to get through the recession, frankly, much better than we would have had we left these fees unadjusted. When you look at the largest fee adjustments that we're making tonight, they go back to 2003, since before their full adjustment. It looks like they're 30% increases. If you annualize them, they're less than 3% annual increases. That's why it's important for us to keep pace with the fees that we charge. As it relates to the building fees, I would only observe that we are experiencing record volume in terms of our plan checks and building permits going on right now in the city. The reason why we have outside consultants coming in is because the amount of work coming in exceeds the capacity of our staff to deal with it at this point. So we are not, if you will, losing any projects. So people are not choosing to remodel because of the fees. What they want is fast, reliable, quick service so that they can move forward with their project. And it is not true, by the way, that the construction cost increase always goes up. In times when commodity prices drop or in times of economic recession, construction costs do drop significantly. That's why we were able to build the City Hall at a much lesser cost than we would have built it if we had done it when you wanted to do it in 2008 someplace else. So I think what we see here is a fair, well thought out, methodical structure that addresses the cost of doing the service here in the city. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because we have to keep pace with what it costs us to do services. It is not true, for example, that we did not need any additional police. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon was correct when she moved forward in the budget, I think with the support of everybody up here except for Mr. Piotr, to add additional police for the peninsula. Now, that added about $500,000 worth of costs. So that has to be paid for, and one of the ways we offset those costs is with the fees that we charge for service. Crime is, in fact, going up. That's why those police officers are needed. The rest of these fees also reflect critical public services that we need to be able to fund. Now, we know we've cut our fees for the tidelands, but we're facing $20 to $60 million obligations for seawall repairs. We've got to find a way to pay for that. We know that we're facing significant costs. We heard some tonight about infrastructure improvements that we need to make for child safety, crossing Jamboree and MacArthur to get to Corona Del Mar High School and Our Lady Queen of Angels. Those projects don't fund themselves. They're funded in part out of the development fees and out of the fee structure that we have in the city. So it's one thing for us to say that we want these kinds of projects. It's another thing to be financially responsible and say we're going to pay for them by doing what responsible managers do, what responsible businesses do, that we're going to run the city like a business, and we're going to adjust our fee schedule periodically to deal with the additional costs of services and goods as they go up. I do appreciate, by the way, the impact, the input of our good friends at the BIA and of this strategy that's been put forward to do a 2-year phase-in of those fees, which I think make them eminently affordable, and I appreciate them working with us on that. So I will make a motion for the recommended action here, including the 2-year phase-in on the building fees as indicated by staff.
Is there a second? I think Mayor Pro Tem Dixon has seconded that motion. Did you want to speak?
Yes.
As it is?
I'm going to try. To follow up, just to clarify for my own edification on the plan review fees, it says in the chart, additional plan review and rechecks in excess of 2 rechecks. So could you clarify for that what that means?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I did want to clarify that. I spoke with Simone earlier, and I don't mean to trivialize the increase of that fee. On paper, it does appear to be a substantial increase, but in practice, our CDD department will not assess this fee. As Simone explained it to me earlier, this assumes that you've gone past the standard plan check hourly rate fee, which is right above that one. If a second recheck is necessary, which is seldom, but if it is, that is the rate. The vast majority of plan check fees fall on the one above that, 124. You'll see the increase is somewhat smaller when compared to the one on line 125. So in essence, it's not a fee that we're using all that much.
So in other words, thank you for clarifying that, Steve. The applicant is getting two
In some
plan checks. Three.
Right.
3 plan checks before that higher rate it gets input. And that seems like, and plus the delayed implementation, as Councilman Curry just mentioned, seems fair to me, but that's my impression. Thank you for that. I have one other question regarding the EMS, what do we call it? Paramedic subscription fee. I honestly do not know how common this is in other cities. I think it appears to be an excellent program. So while fees are going up, we are offering what appears to be a very eminently reasonable $60 annual subscription fee. So if someone could please, or Chief Poster, somebody clarify that for me, to just, if it is what it is, appears to be a very fair program. How do we communicate it? How do we make the community aware of this program? A one-time annual fee of $60, and that covers any multiple ambulance service, EMS services needed. Is that correct? Do I
Yes,
understand?
I think the chief's going to come and explain to you. They do have a plan on doing a sort of advertising campaign for this particular service, but what we just put up on the screen is to give you an idea of other jurisdictions that actually have a fee like this, and it gives you the rates as well. So we're not alone. This is a somewhat common fee used in other jurisdictions.
I just don't know how many people know about it. I guess that would be my next question. What percent of your EMS paramedic service visits currently are covered by a subscription fee? And could we have a goal to create awareness through communications, marketing, to increase that participation rate?
Mayor Pro Tem Dixon Scott Poster, your fire chief, and Angela Crespi, our administrative manager, she can give you the percentage, but I can talk a little bit about what type of marketing per se we've done to inform the citizens or the residents and visitors or the residents of Newport Beach the ability to do this paramedic subscription program. We have in the past used mailers with your utility bills, as well as on occasionally gone into the Newport Navigator to inform people about this. Whenever we have community events, we have cards, we try to circulate those as much as possible. It is definitely an advantage for a resident to take this cost of $60 to alleviate the expense of them involved with transporting. It's in other cities, particularly Huntington Beach, there's a lot more people that take advantage of the subscription program. At Newport Beach, we're at about 5,000. So we would like to increase that membership, and we are trying to do that. We'll be looking at ways to inform the public and encourage them to take advantage of that. And that percentage?
Good evening. As Chief Poster mentioned, we have about a little over 5,000, like 5,200 members this current year. That generates revenue of about $250,000. We have about 5,000 transport services that we provide every year. Of those transport services, for people who are FireMed members, we go ahead and we do bill their insurance company for anything that they will cover, and then we waive the remaining. Out of that roughly $250,000 a year that we're getting in revenue, we have about $100,000 a year average that we write off for residents that are members.
And of that 5,000 figure, how does that compare to prior years? Is that getting great? Is that growing, or is it steady?
It's pretty steady. Yeah,
Well,
it's about 5,000 a year, give or take. It doesn't move a whole lot.
Well, my impression is that it's really a fantastic community service, as other communities have recognized. I would just like to see the next, maybe in a year, you report back, how have we created more awareness, made it easy? I think I read in the staff report, obviously the burden is on the resident to make that payment. How can we make it easy? Online payment through our whatever, through utility bills or whatever. I just would like to facilitate an easier participation opportunity and grow that number.
And if this fee passes tonight, because of the change that we would need to make to promotional material anyway, we are looking for
Good.
Increased mailings and getting those out there. So,
All right. Well, very good. Thank you.
Mayor Selich?
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that over here, but a light bulb went on. And my comments about the fee, now understanding the relationship between lines 124 and 25 have been resolved, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, Councilmember Muldoon.
Thank you. I wanted to go back, Mr. Montano, to some of the services, just so I can have a clear understanding. Those in the audience can as well. If you go to Exhibit A, under services, there are a couple related to crime.
Which line?
So I'm looking at 15-37 and vehicle repossession, domestic violence, sex registrants.
Okay.
What does 0 indicate? Yeah, we may look at two different things.
Okay, 0 means that, so Exhibit A is meant to indicate the amount of cost recovery. So if there's 0, that means that we are not pursuing any sort of cost recovery for these particular fees.
Is there a reason?
These are fees that have been deemed to have community interest to not charge, and previous council decisions have said that these are not fees for which we, as a city, want to charge for.
Okay, so when it says registrant sex, we're talking who would pay, hypothetically, if there were a charge, who would pay that?
The person who is required to register as a sex offender, and you're asking a good question, Councilmember Muldoon. I think the previous council 3 years ago brought the same issue up and said, "Why are we giving these people a break?" Well, it's really about making sure they register.
Well, actually, that's a great point, and I actually agree. The sex registrant, we'll pay them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we want to know who they are. So, but the other ones kind of have me concerned, like narcotics, domestic violence. Well, although the victim, obviously, you wouldn't want. I've prosecuted those, or the he said, she said, and they both claim to be the victim. I guess my point, though, is that there's not always a correlation between the activity within the city limits, like in this case, crime, and the fees being charged. And I think that's sort of the problem that I have, and that Mr. Piotr alluded to when discussing the costs. How do we actually determine what the true costs are, whether it's actual financial or things we can't measure? I would like to make a substitute motion to first approve all fees that are a reduction or stay the same, and to bifurcate that from all fee increases, because I will be voting no on the fee increase aspect, but would like to lodge a yes vote for the reductions and the ones that stay the same.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Yep.
Councilmember Curry?
Well, it is, for people who want to call themselves fiscally conservative, it is the most fiscally irresponsible thing possible to go ahead and approve spending, to go ahead and approve the fee cuts, but then to not want to vote for fee increases because you think it's going to be used against you somehow, and because you're indiscriminately going to be against all fee increases no matter what. The fact of it is that when we don't increase our fees, every taxpayer in the city subsidizes somebody who's getting a specific benefit. As it relates to development fees, in our city, the person who gets the biggest benefit is the Irvine Company, followed by a couple of other large developers. That's who is subsidized at the expense of all the taxpayers. When we don't do the responsible thing, the financially and fiscally conservative thing, and adjust revenues to meet our additional expenses. So, that's what Tea Party government looks like. That's what irresponsible government looks like. That's what we've avoided in Newport Beach up until now. So let's hope that we don't go down that road. There's $800,000 here that's critically important to balance our budget, to help address the $15 million pension issue we've got to deal with, to help address the $20 to $60 million seawall issue we need to address, and to address the other critical issues that are in the budget that we all want to see happen, but nobody wants to pay for. It's time for responsible government to do the responsible thing.
Councilmember Muldoon?
Just as a quick rebuttal, true fiscal responsibility and adulthood, I believe, regardless of Tea Party affiliation or not, which I am not, is living within your means. And it is not on the shoulder of good, productive citizens to subsidize other fees or other costs of the city, which we would have, like crime, when they already pay their fair share in taxes. So I don't think I'm being unreasonable, Mr. Curry, and I don't think Newport Beach is hard up for money. So I'd rather us find a way to spend the money wisely the way we already take from the taxpayers and taking more. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other requests to speak, please vote on the motion.
You want to rephrase
Or
the
amended
motion?
motion. Or substitute motion, excuse me, substitute motion. Pardon me, Mr.
We were just bifurcating the motion, right?
Kevin, why don't you restate your substitute motion?
Thank you. Yes. It was to bifurcate or take away the aspect that is a fee. All the increases would be separated from the decision to keep some fees the same and the decision to reduce the remaining fees. So we would be voting on basically the reduction and the keeping the same of the fees offered.
Okay, and that's your understanding as a second?
Yes, and that's basically we're taking two votes on the original motion. We're bifurcating.
That's this, only if this passes. Does everyone understand? Okay, please vote.
With council members Petros, Curry, and Mayor Pro Tem Dixon and Mayor Selich voting no, the motion fails. 2-4.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend the motion that's on the floor.
Okay.
Contrary to what Mr. Curry thinks, and he hasn't met a fee he doesn't like, I would like to actually try to get a little bit better, more efficient government. So I'd like to amend the motion saying that a couple things. One is that the staff will be required in community development to track their time and costs starting this fiscal year on a per project basis. And that the study, that's item number one. Item number two is that there would be a update in the fee study based on this information at the end of the fiscal year prior to the adoption of the next year's budget. And then third item would be that building and safety and planning would outsource all additional load, as we've heard that we've got people banging down the door, and unlike Mr. Curry's analysis of supply and demand, there isn't another place where they can go. So they shut up, they pay, they move on with their project. And it's not like they're stopping the projects, I understand that. But they don't really have a choice, they can't go anywhere else. But I would like to have a provision in this approval that building and safety would not be hiring new staff for it, but that they would use outsource resources to handle that additional load. And those are the only three.
Mr. Piotr, can I get a clarification on for my notes? The first one you said was to track cost by project.
Right.
The second
Time
one was,
/ costs. Right.
Second one was to come back in within the fiscal year with a report on a more flat fee per project.
It would be. We've got a study that analyzed it at the 30,000 foot level on the costs. I wanted to do on more of a project type and permit type cost.
I see.
So just a more in-depth study based on the fact that we're tracking our time and costs.
Okay. And then the last one was
that both planning and building would use outsourcing wherever possible for the additional load.
But you said something about not hiring additional staff. Is that not replacing staff? Or not hiring new staff based on a certain workload threshold?
Leave it flexible for you and staff to work out that you will outsource it wherever possible to handle the additional load. So I don't want to get into hiring moratoriums or any of that kind of thing.
Okay, it's clear to me. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. On the issue of germaneness, the issue of whether or not we're going to contract out services and whether we're going to have a hiring moratorium or how we're going to do future services has not been properly noticed or agendized tonight for consideration.
I take a look at the agenda item. I think that's accurate. That third point sort of gets away from what we're here for tonight. I think that it's not really related to the fee item. If that's something we'd like to agendize as a separate item, maybe we could bring that back. It just seems like it's a little bit outside of what was noticed.
And we've been talking about outsourcing all night, and we're not requiring it. We're just saying the staff should utilize it. Consider it a goal.
Why don't you just drop it and we'll bring it back? It's not going to be a problem, I don't think.
That's fine. Then I was trying to figure out a way that I could vote for Mr. Curry's tax increases, but I guess I'll just.
Well,
not do
Mr.
that.
Piotr, as apparently you can't read the presentation because it made it very clear what a tax increase is and what a fee increase is, and you continue to be purposefully trying to make yourself look ignorant of that decision, and you try and throw your little Tea Party zingers in here and try and make this council as irresponsible as I guess you've been in your previous career. But at the end of the day, we're here to do the public's business, to move forward, to not subsidize your big contributors and the big developers at the expense of the taxpayers. And people do have a choice, by the way. They can develop in other cities, but they choose to develop here because of the quality of life and the quality of service that we're able to provide through the good fiscal management that we've had for many years until you got here.
Okay, so we've got an amendment to the original motion on the floor with two items, if I understand things correctly. One is to do the tracking, and the other is the update prior to the budget next year. Does the maker of that amendment and the second agree that that's what's on the floor?
Agreed.
Okay, please vote.
Are these, Mr. Piotr, are these goals that you're asking?
Are they goals or mandates? Well, obviously, starting to track time is something they have to do. They would have to actually physically do it. So that would, in effect, be a mandate. Folding that into an updated study at the end of the year or before the next fiscal year is just a logical outfall of tracking time. The other item, as far as outsourcing, can be a goal. I don't have a problem with that.
Let me just point out that when we ask and we're going to mandate staff to track time as part of the process, we're by definition building in more time that they're going to spend in the process. It's going to drive the fee in a little, hamster circle because we don't have any idea what this motion means and what we're doing, and we're going to end up making this service more expensive for people because of this foolish way that we're trying to be political about it. Let's just vote for the fee schedule. If you don't like it next year, come back and vote against it.
Mr. Curry, a lot of cities do track their time this way. This is not an unusual request.
Let's just vote on the motion. So there's a motion on the floor, an amendment to the main motion on the floor. Either vote for it or against it.
With council members Petros, Curry, and Mayor Pro Tem Dixon voting no, the motion fails 3-3.
Okay, so now we'll go back to
Call the question.
Main motion. So please vote when the screen comes up.
With council members Piotr and Muldoon voting no, the motion carries 4-2.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 16, approval of agreement with Spectrum Facility Maintenance for sidewalk steam cleaning services.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, this is just our regular item of bringing a high dollar proposal to you for questions and more visibility outside of current business, on current business. Mike is here to make a presentation if you'd like to hear more. Otherwise, just offer your.
Anyone need a staff report? Not seeing anyone. Any public comment on this item?
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Moser. I don't think it was explained. This item is a contract for steam cleaning of sidewalks in the city. Comments I had to make, I did try to read the staff report. I thought it interesting that the current vendor, called Bonanza, apparently, as near as I can make out from the list, didn't bid on the new contract. I would be curious to know why they did not. Trying to look at the details of the contract, it says throughout that it's for steam cleaning. The map of Balboa Island, which is attachment map B, has this little thing here at the top. although it's referred to as steam cleaning, at the top it says it's for pressure washing, which is a slightly different thing. And then the final comment I make was just a generic one. Reading through the scope of services here, to me it emphasizes the rather haphazard and, to me, rather inequitable way that we dispense services throughout our city. If one reads this in Balboa Village and on Balboa Island, we're providing extensive cleaning at taxpayer expense of the sidewalks for the benefit of the businesses there. And as far as I know, the merchants contribute nothing to that. In Corona del Mar, where we have a business improvement district, we are providing cleaning of trash cans, benches, and bus canopies. But if the merchants there want their sidewalks tidied up, they have to contribute the money themselves through their business improvement district, which they have done a couple of times. And elsewhere in the city where we have equally deserving businesses, they receive no service at all under this contract, as near as I can tell. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, please vote when the screen comes up.
Was there a motion and a second?
Move the item.
Thank you.
Getting ahead of myself. Thank you.
The motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Prior to reading motions for reconsideration, my apologies, I didn't read the ordinance titles for item 15, ordinance 2015-29, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Exhibit A to Newport Beach Municipal Code, Section 3.36.030 related to cost recovery, and ordinance number 2015-30, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Chapter 5.60 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code, paramedic service user fees. Now it's time for motion for reconsideration. A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
I'm happy to see I wasn't the only one that screwed up. Any motions for reconsideration? Okay, seeing none, we're adjourned.